Give us a sense of what you're seeing in terms of the uptick in business, if at all, for aviation.
Well, the good news is there's been a huge uptake in recovery in air travel across Europe, where vaccination rates are rising rapidly. The EU launched this very successful digital green cert yesterday on the 1st of July. Most European states have been issuing it, particularly to their vaccinated citizens, for the previous 14 days. And people are now arriving all the way across Europe with their digital, the QR code on their phones, proving they're vaccinated and they're free to travel because they're not at risk of either catching COVID or spreading COVID. The only country, as the EU themselves confirmed yesterday, that hasn't signed up or hasn't rolled out these digital COVID certs is Ireland.
And what proportion of your fleet is now flying?
I would say about 80% of our fleet is now flying. We're up to, I would think, about 75-80% of normal flights across almost all of Europe. But the two markets that are running slightly behind is UK outbound leisure, which looks like it's going to be released or remove all restrictions on the 19th of July, and Ireland, which is completely locked down.
And in terms of the load factor on those planes, how full are they?
In the month of June, we reported today we carried just over 5 million passengers at a 72% load factor. And in July, we expect that figure to rise to something north of above 8 million passengers, and the load factor will be in the mid-70%.
So all very positive.
Hugely positive. I mean, I myself, I was in Brussels on Tuesday of this week. It was a different world. I mean, they had a meal in a restaurant. The bars are open. They have similar vaccination rates to Ireland. People are wearing masks in public, but there's almost no restrictions on people moving around or on flights in and out of Brussels.
And what's your expectation for September, October, November? Because when we look across the water, who would have been ahead of us in aviation terms by maybe 4 to 6 months, airlines with similar business models to yours had an absolutely roaring summer.
I think there's going to be a practical return to normality by September, October, because firstly, vaccinations will be running up almost, I think, on demand at that point in time. And even Ireland will finally have opened up even by September. And all of the variant scariant narrative being put out by NPHET this week will have been shown to have been completely bogus, because the Delta variant doesn't deliver big rises in hospitalizations, serious illnesses or deaths.
Well, I should of course say that the NPHET modelling, as you would know, strongly argues with that point. But
it doesn't. No. Sorry, no. Let's be careful, Anton. The NPHET modelling kept talking about case numbers without actually pointing out that in the UK there has been a significant rise in case numbers, but mainly among people who are under 35. It has not resulted in any material rise in hospitalizations or serious illness.
No, but sorry, Michael, but NPHET's modelling predicts an increase in hospitalizations and an increase in deaths to more than 1,000 if indoor dining was maintained.
Which is completely false, because it is not being mirrored. UK is running about 6 weeks ahead of us on the Delta variant, and their hospital cases, their serious illnesses and their deaths has not risen. So the NPHET modelling is completely bogus. And our government, now to be fair to NPHET's job is to keep us locked down. NPHET succeeds if we have zero COVID. But we have a government there where ministers like Eamon Ryan and Micheál Martin quake in terror, don't look at the data, don't look at the experience in other European countries, all of whom are now open. And yet every time they get some kind of scare story in from NPHET, they roll over and keep us locked down needlessly.
Well, this brings us to the letter that you wrote to Eamon Ryan, which begins, Dear Minister Ryan, as you are aware, Ireland is the only European member state that was not ready to comply with the EU digital COVID certificate for travel, which came into effect today. Please explain why, when we have confirmation from the system provider that it can be switched on immediately by Ireland for our vaccinated citizens. And it goes on along those lines. In a context, though, where the Department of Foreign Affairs advice is that there shouldn't be any unnecessary travel, does it make much difference if there isn't a COVID certificate?
It does. I mean, because we have a huge difficulty today. The law of Europe, I mean, Ireland is perfectly free to delay the issue of the COVID certificates to our citizens. What it's not free to do, though, is to prevent European citizens who are fully vaccinated travelling with the COVID certificate arriving in Ireland. And yesterday we had a whole slew of cases at Dublin Airport where fully vaccinated Belgian, Italian and German citizens arrived up with their QR code and their digital COVID cert, only to be threatened with mandatory hotel quarantine by the border force, who didn't know what the QR code was. We had chaos at the airport yesterday. and chaos being visited on fully vaccinated EU visitors who have a legal entitlement to come to Ireland because they're fully vaccinated, pose no threat to public health, and yet they're being told either they have to spend 10 days in quarantine or they won't be allowed in at all.
Although, as frustrating as that must be for them, I assume it's a very small part of your business.
It's a small part of our business, but it's a huge part of our tourism industry in this country. Nobody seems to pay any attention to the tourism industry, particularly here in Dublin. Everybody just kind of cleverly or lazily assumes, well, staycationers will fill the hotels in the west and the south of Ireland, which is probably true for July and August, although once the schools reopen in September, they'll be empty. But we have a huge hotel industry in Dublin that depends on UK and European visitors coming here, and they're the people who tend to stay in Dublin. Dublin's hotels are empty. Dublin's visitor attractions are empty. And we now have the bizarre situation that because of Eamon Ryan's abject failure to just switch on a computer, we have up to 200 million potential European visitors, all of whom are fully vaccinated, are now being illegally denied access to Ireland, despite the fact they pose no threat to public health.